Welcome again to another in the series, Snippets on the Development of Jamaican Music. You're listening to, in the background there, a Skatalites hit, Eastern Standard Time, featuring the magnificent arms of the one and only Don Drummond. I must point out, before we go any further, that I do not own the rights to this music, but this music is a necessary component of telling the story of how the music developed in Jamaica, where it come from, and to the point where it has taken us. Now, the Skatalites, a product of the 50s, a product of one of the most profound period in Jamaica's economic life. The 1950s, Jamaica had found itself enjoying strong economic growth. The bauxite industry, tourism, those industries had started opening up. And although the bauxite industry was in the central part of the island, it was hemmed in by the tourism that was on the coast. This provided some 10,000 jobs for Jamaicans. The unintended consequence of this, though, especially the opening of the bauxite industry, was that it displaced more than 300,000 Jamaicans. And Jamaicans at that time, in an effort to try to find economic options, began that great urban drift into Kingston and Spanish Town to a lesser extent. Now, the drift into Kingston would have been caused by this promised industrialization that was taking place in Kingston. Keep in mind, the Second World War would have been over some 12-15 years earlier, and Jamaica found itself in a position where agriculture and certain types of manufacturing industries were opening up, and this promised a lot of jobs. Of course, these people migrated into Kingston, and lo and behold, two problems ensued. The lack of housing resulted in a level of squatting that was never before seen, not only in Jamaica but anywhere in the Caribbean. And of course, a lot of the jobs that were promised were never ever delivered. Now, the result of that squatting was that we ended up seeing a clutch of Jamaicans, a clutch of Jamaicans who were living on the periphery, if you will, of the city. An area that would have run from where Walton Park Road joined Spanish Town Road all the way into downtown Kingston, an area of about 2.5 miles or 2.5 square miles largely, which became one of the largest squatter settlements in modern Jamaica. Now, of course, with the squatting, the lack of housing, what you then found is a situation where no jobs, nothing to do. These youngsters now needed to find something that they could provide them with some economic sustainability. And in the mid-1950s, almost every youth in the Kingston ghetto wanted to be a singer, based on what they had seen in the earlier years. A lot of the people who were kind of finding their way out of the economic malaise had basically done so through the use of their singing talent. On top of that, most of these youths banded together in singing groups, a phenomenon that had grown out of what they had seen taking place in North America, with the rise in singing groups, the groups like the the Temptations, the Dells, these groups, large groups of youngsters coming together and making their way in the music. And the same was true down here in Jamaica. Now, facilities like Ambassador Theatre, Majestic, the Palace Cinema in downtown Kingston, the Ward Theatre, these facilities were also opening up to these youngsters. And what the operators of these facilities were known to do is to put, they were putting on what they call concerts between films that were shown in some of these cinemas. And the whole idea was to identify again local talent. Now, one individual that was most renowned in terms of his association with these live shows was a man called Vere Everett Johns. Vere Johns for short. Johns was born in Mandeville in 1893, and after serving a stint in World War I, he found success as a newspaper columnist in the United States in the 1920s. This was a career that he continued when he returned to Jamaica in 1939. In 1940, Johns began a long-running Vere Johns Says column in the Jamaica Star newspaper, and the topic that he spent a lot of time and had paid a lot of attention to was the topic of music. The Vere Johns Talent Contest was held mostly on a Wednesday night. Let me just cue up another tune here. We're listening to Don Drummond's I Must Point Out, and this tune is called Ring of Fire. Now, to continue, these talent contests were, as I said, they were conducted on a Wednesday night, and how it worked is that the performer that received the loudest cheer would be declared the winner. Of course, you can imagine how Jamaicans were. You bring your own cheering group, and if necessary, you also buy out some of the cheerers for the other contributors, the other participants in the show, right? Now, how the contests ran, they were generally a progressive series of appearances over weeks, and the winner and the first runner-up were guaranteed a place in the next round. And this continued all the way through to a quarter and a semi-final. It was perhaps through these shows that Jamaicans developed a reputation of being the hardest audience to please, and more often than not, contestants, as I said, had to bring their own cheering group, or as I indicated earlier, pay off some of the existing members of the cheering section to ensure that they get the best reaction. Now, that notwithstanding, the contest produced some of the finest names in Jamaican entertainment, and some of the names that were associated with this included people like the Blues Busters, Alton and his sister, Alton Ellis and Hortense Ellis, Bob Andy, Lascelles Perkins, Wilfred Jackie Edwards, Desmond Decker, Derek Morgan, Boris Gardner, John Holt, James Jimmy Cliff Chambers, Roy Richards, Higgs and Wilson, Charlie Arganier, Dobby Dobson, and the Wailers, among a host of other performers. So this is where this thing started out. The crucible was these talent contests, and Jamaicans utilize these contests to show their skill. As I said, we are a people that are highly resourceful, very resilient, and here is that resilience being shown. What you are listening to in the background there, the great Skatalites. I mentioned that the Wailers were part of this thing. And what I want you to listen to is a tune that came from one of the best known names in Jamaican music, that came out of these same contests. The one and only, young, you know, everybody knows young Bob Marley. And Marley produced a nice song at the time. And here it is. One cup of coffee. Again, I don't own the rights to the music, folks. Just putting it together so that we can tell this great Jamaican story. This is young Bob Marley leading what was then the Wailers. We give a lot of credit for this tune in the collector's world to just Bob Marley, but it actually was the Wailers band that put this tune together. But the high point, the highlight was the singing voice of Nesta Robert Marley. That was his name, not Robert Nesta Marley, but Nesta Robert Marley. Folks, if you're enjoying this series of presentations, I am going to invite you to please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. There's a lot more of these stories to be told. Jamaican music is dynamic. It has placed us on the map. The king himself, you're listening to the young version of the king, Robert Nesta Marley. And while you're at it, subscribing, I'm going to ask you as well, go to my website at www.yardabra.com and look around. You will notice I have on display in the background there one of my reggae t-shirts. They are available on my website. There are some really nice hoodies as well, and I would encourage you, go to my website, pick that up. You will notice also in the background this ska, my tribute to the movement of the development of ska in Jamaica in the form of my original painting there, featuring a section of the Skatalites. And of course, the man in the felt hat is my representation of the late great Don Drummond. So folks, this is it. This is Jamaican music. This is my little snippet on the development of the music in Jamaica. We have given so much to the world, 5 great genres, and I am going to ask you until you join me again for snippets on Jamaican music, go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. See you next time.